Hello, happy Monday. My laptop, very rudely, just died. But before it died, I did read an email from Jessica. And Jessica was saying that she's done quite well in recovery recently. And she's working with a psychologist and has been trying to eat without restriction, eating physical and mental hunger, eating lots of different foods. It sounds like has really taken a step up in recovery. But she said that the problem that she's having is that at the back of her head, her eating disorder is still chirping away, and especially what she's struggling with is after eating, the guilt that she feels after eating. So it's a really common thing. I do actually think it's one of the part of the biological packages of having an eating disorder is this feeling of guilt that we get after we've eaten more than what our brains perceive to be the minimum amount that we need to keep going each day. And so I do think it's part of the biological package, the kind of migration thing your brain's trying to tell you, hey, no, you can't just be eating all the time, you gotta move, get on with you. And I think that what happens over the years is that just becomes a learned response by the brain. And that's why I'm always going on about rewiring, because we have to change all of these learned responses. And so it's like your brain over the years has just begun to associate that the relevant response that it should, emotional response that it should deliver after you've eaten differently than usual, more than you would usually eat, anything like that, your brain's basically learnt that the correct response is guilt. That is what the correct response is. And the way it's learnt that is because you've paid attention to that guilt response and you've gone into that guilt response each time you've eaten more over the years than you think that you should or differently. And so your brain's learned that because you paid attention to that guilt response, it must be correct. It's not. So now we've got to teach your brain, thank you very much, brain, for listening, but no, actually, guilt is not the correct response after eating food. And you do that by not paying attention to that guilt response, by completely ignoring it. And where we pay mental attention teaches our brain as to what is important and what's not. And so if you can ignore that guilt response, refuse to go into it, your brain's just suggesting. Whenever your brain has an emotion, it's basically a suggestion. And your brain's just suggesting, oh, you should feel guilty now, because that's what you always do after you eat more food than usual. And if your brain gives you that suggestion, you go, no, actually, thanks, no, I'm not going to feel guilty. And you ignore it. Then your brain starts to go, well, maybe guilt's not relevant anymore. Maybe that's not the right emotion after eating more. I have to think about that. Maybe I'll be a little bit more open to different emotions after I've eaten. And if you continue doing that, if you continue ignoring that guilt emotion, then ultimately your brain just learns that that's no longer relevant and it stops suggesting it. And that's what rewiring is. That's where we want to get your brain. We want to get your brain to understand that actually the relevant emotion after eating food is always just contentness and feeling happy. Jessica, I hope that helps. It sounds like you are doing some good work in recovery. Well done. Keep going.